I think the difficulty for people living with HIV is stigma and discrimination, and I think we can hear lots about the excellent treatments that are available for people, but actually we need to challenge stigma, and I think it's stigma and discrimination that makes it difficult for people still living with the virus. So in spite of all the treatments and in spite of all the excellent support services, stigma is the one problem that we've got to overcome in order to make the lives of people living with HIV much more wholesome and much more sort of successful and much more happy, really.
Well, good evening. I'm Lee Adams, Deputy Chief Exec at the Council, and it's my privilege to MC this event tonight. You've probably read in the paper today or heard on the news that there have been some announcements, one of hope and one of despair, I think. That's how they struck me, really. One was that I think President Obama and Hillary Clinton have been talking about the beginning of the end of HIV and AIDS, and which has been brought about by the new drugs and so on that people are having. But also the despair of the fact that the global fund for HIV and AIDS has been cut for the next few years, and in fact they fund, as I understand it, over 70% of all treatment work in poor countries. So you can imagine that coupled with the world financial crisis and care and general aid being cut to those countries, that we are really going to see an increase again, I'm afraid. So bear that in mind through the speeches. That's we had some messages of hope, but also some quite worrying developments. So we gather here for the last few years to mark this very important day. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Councillor Julie Dorr, the leader of the Council, give a Sheffield perspective.
Just a bit of a potted personal history around my sort of connection with HIV and AIDS. The first thing is very personal, and I will share it with you. I left school at 16 and I went to work for a construction company, and I met there a very young, intellectual, very attractive, wonderful, sensitive, kind and gentle older man. He was young, but he was older than me. I was 16, he was 28. And I went on, I have to say I had a bit of a crush on him, to be perfectly honest. And I and another very close friend of mine, we used to go out quite a lot together and socialise together. After I'd been there for years, he left to go to London. And he went down to London, he got a job down there, and he went down to work there because of his sexuality. And his parents weren't aware of his sexuality. And he felt that going down there would help him and help his family. We kept in touch with him by writing letters and keeping in touch in that way, and saw him on several occasions over the following few years. But very, very sadly to say, he became HIV positive, and subsequently he got AIDS and he died of AIDS, which broke my heart. I also think that when you've been touched by something and you realise what people actually go through, it makes you all the more aware but more determined to help and support people in similar circumstances. Following that, I left that construction company not that long after, and I went to work for a social housing provider. And whilst I was there, I got a contact from Steve Slack. I was the housing manager there. And what I realised was that what was brought to my attention is that it was extremely difficult at that time because of the stigma that was associated with HIV positive and AIDS, that people weren't willing to give information for various reasons when they wanted to access services, and housing, social housing, was one of those services. And as we all know, that when you are in circumstances where you may need support and where you may need help, not necessarily at that moment in time, but in future, your housing needs aren't always that obvious, especially if you're not in a position to share your personal circumstances. So often, there may be occasions where we got, you know, a single person asking for a 2-bedroom property because of their needs, but particularly for their future needs. And without giving any specific personal information, the policy wouldn't allow to give a single person 2-bedroom property. Steve contacted me as the housing manager and raised this with me. And together we devised a policy where that sort of very, very personal information didn't need to be shared with anyone at that moment in time other than the housing manager. So we went on to devise that policy, and it was, and subsequently from that point, for many years after that, I was sort of semi-involved with the movement. I went to conferences, I was always made aware of particular services that were being provided or developed, and we continue to ensure that people that wanted to keep information to themselves for whatever reasons could access services that they need. It's still something that I think is particularly important to the council, because as now the leader of the council, I have not done an evaluation of the services that the council provide and how we do it. As I say, I did as housing manager at the social housing provider because we adapted services to ensure that they met their needs. And I think in the council, my understanding is we are very, very supportive, and we continue to support not just financially, but in many other ways, people in Sheffield. And I know that there's quite a lot of people that come from out of Sheffield into Sheffield to get access the excellent services that we've got. Sheffield is determined to continue to support. We're in very difficult financial times, and we have got to agree on how we spend, reducing declining budgets. But just to say and to reassure you that we will definitely continue to support the services that we support, because we see that this has been really important. Thank you all for coming today, because I know there will be people that have got a personal interest and have been touched by it more than others. But I think we should raise awareness and make sure that everyone knows about it. So I'll finish there and I'll pass you on to the next speaker, which is, are you coming back, Lee? And thank you for bearing with me, and you know, I wish everyone that either is touched by this particular you know, cause continues to go on forth and work together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julie. Our second speaker is Leroy Williamson from the Sheena Amos Youth Trust. I know that some of you know Sheena or knew her, but for those that you don't, Sheena was a worker at the Centre for HIV and Sexual Health some 25 years ago now, and she did amazing work with young people and in schools and through peer education projects, and the charity supports and extends that work all of the time since. So I'm sure you might want to put a donation in the, what do you call those containers? Thank you, collection box, that's it, on the store. So please do that later on. So Leroy is a worker at the Trust, and they've been running all kinds of sexual health projects for some time. And their Yumbo group, I'm hoping Leroy will explain what Yumbo stands for, have made these lovely lanterns with the Art in the Park project.
Hello everybody. So yes, SAYT, Sheena Amos Youth Trust. It's a registered charity It was set up to support young people with their sexual and emotional well-being. We currently work with lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender young people up to the age of 25, and separate from that, young people that are affected by HIV, young people aged 11 to 19. So the project that was set up to support young people affected by HIV is called YAMBO. Usually spelt with a J, this means welcome in Swahili. YAMBO was established in June 2009 and currently supports 16 young people. The group meets twice a month on Saturdays. One of these sessions is a support information session where the young people in the group decide on what issues they need support with. So recently these have included things like sex and relationships, understanding HIV, anger management and conflict resolution. Then we have another session with the young people, and that's a social session where the young people come together and just socialise with other young people that are in a similar situation. The group decide to go for things like meals out, trip to the cinema, and this year they've been to Blackpool, Alton Towers and a trip to the Peak District. In addition to these sessions with the young people actively get involved in national pieces of work, so they've attended various conferences and meetings around the country that are working on similar projects. Currently, the group are working on developing their own local website, so there'll be a website that the young people are going to develop. It's going to be a safe space for them to communicate with the young people. It's going to provide lots of information for young people locally. So the money raised from today will enable us to promote this project more and continue to support the young people that are very isolated and marginalised. We do a lot of one-to-one support with the young people and their families. So some of the young people, need a lot more support than just attending the group. So there's lots of work to be done supporting those young people on a one-to-one basis with lots of different issues, and that could be in school, at home, or we meet them in town somewhere. So yeah, these young people are, they are very isolated and marginalised, and with this money we can continue to provide a confidential space where the young people feel safe. So thank you for all coming today, and thank you for all your contributions and support on behalf of everyone who is part of YAMBO.